get some comments and then we'll get to it. So we'll be doing that shortly. So all three of you own it together, if you don't mind my asking? You two? Ah, okay.
You're on.
Well, I don't, if we're ready to start, I don't know, that give it 2 more minutes or, okay, I need to come to agenda. Cubs are playing tonight, so. Okay, so welcome to the August 2nd, 2023 regular meeting of the Durham Planning Board. And so the first thing we do is roll call determination of quorum. We've got a quorum, and so we have four members. I dropped the ball and Brian did not get you elevated, or whatever the right term is, to a voting member. So it is with, unless there's some objection, I would like to appoint Brian as an, elevate him, whatever the right term is, to a voting member this evening, and then hopefully I've got my act together in the next selectman meeting, I'll make you an official voting member, regular member, whatever the correct term is.
I will second that motion. If that
I don't need one, just as long as nobody's raising objections, we don't really need one. So. Okay, so roll call, the quorum, we have Brian Lanoy, Tyler Hutchison, Alan Puritan, and John Talbot. Juliet is on vacation. I can't believe she'd rather go on vacation than attend one of our meetings, but she did. And so we have that part of it is done. Do we have any amendments to the agenda?
None here.
Julie, do you have any change amendments to the agenda? Okay, moving past that to the acceptance of the July 5th, 2023 minutes. Do I have any comments or motion to accept?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the July 5th meeting.
Second?
Second.
Having motion and a second.
Yeah, one comment I have on item number 9, which was the financial and technical capacity, and I believe it's a typo. Shows that the votes to approve is 4, and the votes to deny was 4. I believe the votes to deny should be 0.
We only have 4 people, so. Okay, would you amend your motion, Tyler, to include Alan's comment?
I will motion to accept the minutes with the edits.
That's correct.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Second. And having any further comment? All those in favor, raise your hand. Did you vote tonight? 4-0, it passed.
I was it then.
Oh, you were there? And you're a legal voter. Okay, so that is that. So informational exchange on non-agenda items. So Alan, you are the only town official, George, you are the only town official here this evening. Would you like to make comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to state, I put that 4 in there just to see if we really need it. No, I've got 3 items to update you on. First is that, as you know, the Conservation Commission was asked by the Planning Board to prepare a set of draft amendments for the town meeting dealing with the solar alternative energy systems, solar energy systems, which we don't have any standards for, as well as for cell towers. They've met over the last month or so and decided that they are definitely going to move forward with the solar standards, but they don't feel like they have the time or capacity this year to do the cell tower standards. So that's what they communicated to John and myself. Secondly, there is a state, as you know, the state mandate for increasing housing density, otherwise called the Affordable Housing Law, which doesn't really, the affordable housing aspects of it don't apply to Durham, but for the parts that Durham does have to deal with, there is a mandate that they require the state to reimburse the town for any and all expenses that towns incur in order to comply with the state law. So I've been tracking all of my time on working on LD 2003 implementation since we heard about that, and we'll be doing that going forward. Theoretically, the planning board members, your stipends would also be covered, as well as any attorney's fees. So what we'll do, rather than trying to keep track of it at every meeting, where, you know, if we talk for an hour on that, it's one, whatever percentage of your $50, whatever the stipend is. What we'll do is, if we have a special workshop with the entire evening, then we'll record the planning board members' time for that, because that'll be significant, so. But the town manager's pretty confident that we should make the $5,000 that's available in terms of billing. They're actually gonna send the money, and then we submit invoices for the expenses incurred. If we come up short, we can probably go back and document, you know, time spent before this announcement, so just wanted to have you update.
Yeah, I mean, the way I read it, it goes back to like June of last, whenever we started talking about it.
Yep, so.
So we should be able to do that.
And then the third thing is, one of the handouts that I put on your desk, in addition to a new application that came in for an amended subdivision, there is, the town manager has been contacted by the Greater Portland Council of Governments, and Matt Panfill, who's actually a Durham resident and is the planning director down at GP Cog, alerted Jerry to the availability of a DOT grant for doing facilities studies in terms of future improvements. So he and Jerry put together a proposal that they submitted to MDOT and received a grant for $8,000 to do a visioning plan for the town properties here, which include this building, the ball field, the Eureka Center, as well as the fire station. And there's been a lot of discussion about these properties in the past in terms of various needs and issues. This will be more directed toward potential transportation aspects, such as getting a realignment and reconstruction of the intersection there by the Eureka Center, looking at the parking lots and their access, possibly looking at a pedestrian connection between these four properties, because right now you can only walk along the road. So one of the things we've discussed, we've talked about bandwidth for committees, is right now the town manager is envisioning that this would be mainly a staff coordinated process, as opposed to the planning board or some other special committee being formed by the select board. And so what we're thinking is that it'll be basically a process that will give opportunity for public input into coming up with a plan for these properties for the future, that will then put the town in a position to apply for funding for actual improvements of the road and pedestrian network and system. So that's kind of the process that's starting now, and I gave you a 3D visualization that I prepared as a base for the study that GPCOG is going to be doing, as well as the proposal that GPCOG has put together that describes the process. So if the planning board is interested in getting involved in that process, at some level, you should talk to Jerry, the town manager. Okay? That's my
good.
That's my comments.
I guess,
I have a couple of questions
Please do.
regarding the report you just laid out, George. Regarding the grant, I think that it'd be good to have the planning board give some input during that process. And then the second thing we brought up was, sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now. It'll come to me.
Okay.
and an email or whatever afterwards. Okay, yeah, so if we just gotta figure out how to, you know, the process with Jerry is how we like our.
So there is a timeline on that proposal that talks about different events, and if you folks want to give Jerry some input, if, you know, you think you'd like to host a part portion of it or whatever, then I'm sure he'll be happy to hear from you. But right now, he's envisioning with everything that you've got going, with the public process for the draft land use amendments, the select board has their plate pretty full. He's thinking that at this stage, that we'll keep it just as a staff initiative to just kind of work through with GPCOG to coordinate the public event and host it and explain it and get the public input and see if there's a, you know, community vision for what should be done in these properties in terms of just basic improvements, not a big elaborate expansion, but just simply, like for example, Eureka, the we have meetings over there, you come out and it's pitch black. This is just not a good situation.
Sort of like the town hall.
Yeah, and getting across from the fire station, if you have to park over there. So those are the types of things that we'll be looking at. Another issue is the, long-standing need to get internet access to the Eureka Center so that we can have larger public meetings. Those are the types of issues that I think this study would be looking at.
Would it take, also talk about the fact, what we want to do to Eureka besides Wi-Fi?
It could be whatever the
ADA
citizens,
access or-
whatever the citizens envision for these properties for the future, that could become part of a master plan, just a vision. And then that would, I'm sure there would be some improvements that we talked about, like the parking lots and the pedestrian connections and the parking lot lighting, those sorts of things could go into a master plan that would then be submitted as a basis for requesting DOT funding.
Just remember, so you mentioned the commission, Conservation Commission taking on the solar field regulations, but the cell towers, did they consider that we have already seen a cell tower in front of this board, and what we went through to get that approved? In other words, take that into consideration, maybe it eases the burden on the amount of work that they have to put into researching that.
Well, back in 2016, actually, it's been 2018, this board did review the last tower. And I was asked to prepare a memo, and part of that memo, I researched, basically all you have is a general conditional use standards. Most communities have standards for actual cell tower in terms of fall zones, visual impact analysis, all of those things. There's nothing to guide the board's review process. And as I explained in earlier meetings, under the Federal Telecommunications Act, there are pretty strict limits on how towns can regulate cell towers. And if you don't follow those federal guidelines, those federal law requirements, you can really put the town at a great disadvantage. So it's really more, and the other, for them, I think the pressing issue is, okay, how much capacity do they have with everything else they've got going? And then secondly, what's the pressure? We know there are solar farms being planned for Durham. Cell towers, we had one go in, there's not necessarily a lot of rumblings that you could be hitting more applications in the short term. So I think those are probably some of the factors that led to their decision to just go with the solar this year, maybe look at cell towers next year.
Do you know how Alan is looking at these, the building inspector? Like, I know that the International Building Code, IBC, addresses cell towers and solar farms, but Maine hasn't adopted the latest IBC. I think it's 2012 that Maine has adopted. So there's like really no building codes that Alan, our building inspector, can fall back on. So what do you know what he is?
Well,
looking
first,
at
I
when he's
don't
reviewing
think that either solar energy installations or cell towers are regulated by the International Building Code. I think that's more
There are
specialized.
standards that
Yeah.
that are adopted, but Maine has not adopted the latest IBC code.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We probably have to get Alan's input.
Well, we can ask him for the next meeting, so.
Yeah.
I do know he's concerned about both. I think the challenge is, as George mentioned, is bandwidth of the Conservation Commission, our bandwidth, and then what do we want, how much do we want to present to the town? Because I think even dropping cell towers, we still have 5 land use article changes. One of them, we kind of say it's pretty minor, it becomes a major thing, but it is, so that's a lot. Plus the next conversation about town stuff is Union Church, which there's a committee, I'll just go ahead and, so it is going to be before the town meeting in April. And that's probably a fairly big, challenging discussion before the town as well. So I think we know we've got people interested in solar farms, so we want to do something. I think it's fair to say we've not had anybody beating down the door to do a cell tower. So it's, I guess, prioritizing the.
I will follow up with Alan on the question
But
of
it is-
if any building codes apply to these facilities.
So Tyler, did you want to cover, or should I cover the Union Church quickly? What's going on with the committee?
Yeah, I'm happy to say so. The group.
We don't want you to feel left out.
Happy to hear my voice. Union Church Committee is meeting tomorrow. We're on a 2-week period, so every 2 weeks we meet. We're basically trying to look into what will the use of the Union Church be, or what is our plan as a town for the Union Church going forward, whether that is just parking to allow for some sort of public events to happen, or it's sold to the Historical Society, or a bunch of other ideas. We're in early stages of sort of going through past construction and repairs and looking towards the future and how much that would cost and whether or not that's something the town at large would like to take on for the future.
So Tyler and I are both on that committee, and if you've got any comments, you can send them to Tyler or I, good ideas, uses, whatever it may be. So it's an open-ended, there's nothing, it's not set in concrete that we're gonna do this, that, or the other thing.
We'll have one meeting so far, so could be going anywhere.
And the site visit. So that is, and I guess, George, would, and I wonder, might give you feedback on, what kinds of things might want to go in there beyond what's in the corner there now, other kinds of buildings or whatever, so I need to think about that one. So, anything else from town officials, anyone present? Okay, so folks, the next item on our agenda is comments from the general public, citizens of this town that are not about anything that's on the agenda. So this is a little catch-22. The campground is on the agenda. So you technically can't speak during this part about it, but then you also can't speak when it actually comes up this time. So that sounds like, well, what the heck am I doing here? So we will most likely in the near future, our next meeting and the one after that, have a public hearing where we will take comments from the public and let you speak on about that. If you have the time, comes don't start till 8 o'clock or so, you're welcome to stay, because what we will do with the petitioner after this is we're going to go through what they are proposing to do, and then concerns, comments that the planning board has, so you get a chance to hear what our issues, concerns are. We feed that back to them, so they've got an opportunity to modify, if they desire, modify their plans or whatever. So I don't want you to think it's a complete waste that you're here. And so as we're going forward and you look at the agendas posted at least a week in advance on the town website under the calendar, if you see something and it says public comment not taken, then there's not, at that point, there's not a chance to speak at it. But we'll give you a chance to give feedback for this project, and you're always welcome, if there's something you hear this evening, as a petitioner or as neighbors or whatever, to send George an email and say, I didn't understand this part of it, or can you explain it to me, or I'm against whatever it may be, or I'm for whatever it may be that's there. The other thing I do need to say is, two things is, one, if you have concerns about the project, I would ask you to talk to the petitioner and see, kind of work out any issues. It's probably easier if you do it with them. The other thing is, now that it has been formally filed with the planning board, you cannot talk to anybody except our town planner, Mr. Thavarj. So all comments, questions, emails, whatever, please send them through George. He's very good about forwarding them on to us. But it's our rules, the law, whatever it may be, doesn't let us, and that includes the petitioner, doesn't let us have direct contact with you. So, but you, I don't want to discourage comments, good, bad, or otherwise. So, we are, having said all of that, I guess the one thing I didn't ask, are there any non-residents who want to make a comment? If not, then we're gonna move on to the other part of the agenda, which is new business, conditional use application for expansion of the leisure campground for 112 RV sites. It's located on map 2, lot 13, I believe it's 24 Leisure Lane.
John, before we get into that,
Yep.
I do have
Oh, I'm sorry.
an item that I'd like to bring up.
Thank you for reminding me. Please do.
It was at the last selectmen's meeting that there was a comment about transparency. It's interesting enough, some of the items that they had written them down over here about communication and transparency was one of the last items, and they specifically, comment was made that a subdivision was just approved and there was no public input for that subdivision. Well, that was an incorrect statement. Because under the Article 6, under subdivision regulations, and then we go into section 6.6.e, which is notice to abutters, which was done. And that is all documented, that notice was completed. Then under section 6.h, it's determination of completeness, the board shall determine whether to hold a public hearing on, for the preliminary plan, which we did. Sketch plan was, this was for the Deer Creek. And the sketch plan was initially submitted on May 4th, 2022. And there was a revised sketch plan that was submitted on May 12th. On July 13th, there was a public hearing held on a preliminary plan. Whether the individual making those comments didn't recall that, I don't know. But we did have that public hearing, and that was well documented in our minutes. And then when we proceed up to 6.8H, and its final plan application, it is about the public hearing. And it specifically says, if the board, being the planning board, decides to hold a public hearing, there will be one held. But I believe based on all of the information that we received at the public hearing and all of the detailed information that was requested of the applicant, that an additional public hearing wasn't warranted. So I just want to make it clear that this planning board has been very transparent. And I certainly think that we will continue to be.
I would, having been there for all of that, I would agree with you. So what are you talking about is the same process that we'll go through on the campground. But throughout that process, there were a couple of things that were good about that process. One is the neighbors did work with the developer, which was helpful. But I think there were issues about setbacks and other things. And there certainly was plenty of opportunity for feedback. And I think we got some. George, we got some. So I guess a difference of opinion on that one. And I will talk to the.
No, that's a difference of fact.
A difference of, I would agree with you, a difference of fact on that one, I will talk to the chairman of the select board as well. And give him similar information. Yeah. So we do pride ourselves in being open and transparent, so. Okay, so we have another chance to be open and transparent. And what I'd like to do is the way this process will work is that the petitioners, if you would just come up to the table. This is a relatively informal process. So we'll start off with Mr. DeBarge, our town planner, will give a quick introduction to your project. And then we'll give you the opportunity to describe it and what you're going to do, what you want to do, and how you're going to do it.
Tried to fix it, and I think I jammed it.
We can turn the light up.
You want to, I've got it, nobody ever wants to sit next to me, so this seat is indeed open. So, no, I've lost my place.
You wanted me to summarize?
I want you to summarize, please, so I can get off the stage. This way, we've got.
Okay, so, The applicant is here tonight requesting a conditional use permit for the expansion of the leisure campground, as John indicated. And the application proposes that their authorization be expanded from 36 campsites currently to a total of 112. And they've talked about possibly doing it in phases of 30 to 40 per year.
One,
Yeah.
they're gonna add 112 for a total of 148?
No,
Right.
correct?
That's
Add- It's 148, I'm sorry. All right.
No, add another
It's impressive, first time my math.
Yeah, yes, you're correct. I just misread my own notes. Just 148, sorry. And then one question that's come up is that it's not clear in the application of what the term seasonal means. Under the regulations, there is pretty clear guidance that a seasonal campground, which is a permitted use, is limited to 12 weeks between the time period of May 15th and September 15th, and then 2 weeks maximum occupancy term for any time outside of that summer, fall window. Although there is language, as John pointed out, in the campground section of the ordinance, there is a somewhat of a fuzzy line of differentiation between a campground and an RV park. And typically RV parks are generally more permanent, more constructed than a campground is. And obviously, they're mixed in some cases. But if you go to other parts of the country, an RV park is an RV park. You don't have campsites in an RV park typically. It's much more developed. It's somewhere between a mobile home park and a campground. So that's part of the fuzziness of the regulations, and I understand that DHHS basically has one category of campground, RV park, and their regulations cover both. So that's something to be clarified, not so much from a technical standpoint as from a practical standpoint of what is being proposed. So Durham has adopted its land use ordinance to deal with these types of situations where we don't have an RV park in our ordinance. We have mobile home park, we have campground, this is a little bit different. So this ordinance provides the flexibility that anything that doesn't fit completely into one of these categories can be reviewed under the category of other commercial services not otherwise listed. So for example, in the past you had dog kennels. Now you have doggy daycare. The use has changed and the impacts of it have changed. And so if someone came in for a doggy daycare and the ordinance lists kennel, you can approve it as long as it meets the conditional use criteria. That you can't create drainage problems, noise problems, safety problems, environmental problems. So that's kind of the system that we're using. And this particular application will trigger a two-step review process, where the first step will be to look at those general issues under conditional use of drainage, safety, public health, those general criteria. But in addition to that, there is a specific site plan review process that's kind of like reviewing a subdivision, where you're going to look at the details of the site. You're going to look at the topography. Does this fit the topography, or are they altering the topography? Are there wetlands they need to stay away from? So those are more design issues in terms of the circulation of vehicles within the site, access to the site, utilities, all of those detailed design issues. If they don't get their conditional use approval, there's no point in them spending a lot of money doing a lot of engineering and other studies if, as a use, it doesn't work. So again, what we want to focus on at this stage is the use itself and get into the detailed review of, light poles and sewer pipe sizes and all of that, if and when it gets to site plan review. Now, obviously, there's kind of like RV park and RV and camp, there's some overlap there. Sometimes you may need some of those detailed answers in order to make a decision on the general safety issues or environmental issues. So it's not that we can't talk about those things, it's just that we don't want to focus on those things, if that makes sense. So they have submitted an application that addresses the conditional use criteria. And the first question for the board to answer, is that a complete application? So have they given you all the information that you need in order to make a decision on whether to grant a conditional use permit or not, weighing it against all of those criteria? So I did prepare some draft findings and conclusions, which basically takes their current submission and plugs in the information under each of those categories. And you can use that as a guide, not for making a decision tonight, or even after, next meeting if you hold a public hearing, but just simply to say, okay, do these facts give us enough information to decide whether or not this is going to cause a safety problem, or a drainage problem, or an environmental problem? And if not, then you should tell the applicants the application is not complete because you need some additional information. And then let the applicant know what that information is that you're going to need. So then you determine, they come back, they give you the information that you've requested, you determine it's complete, and then you begin with, and I know you're going to be considering whether to hold a public hearing, but I'm assuming you will. You would then schedule a public hearing, and then take that public input, raising concerns, giving information, and factor that information, public information, into the findings as well. And then, once you've got all that information, you would then deliberate and vote on whether the application meets the conditional use criteria or not. And your options, as with subdivisions, are listed in the land use ordinance, and those are to approve the application for a conditional use permit without any conditions, which usually never happens, but technically that's an option under the law. Second is to approve it with conditions, and if you are going to impose conditions on the applicant for whatever, two things should be done. Number one, there should be a specific reason and justification for imposing that condition tied to the conditional use criteria. So if it's not in the conditional use criteria, you can't say, we got too many school kids, you can't have kids there. That's not any of the conditional use criteria, so you can't put on a condition like that. But you can put on a condition, hours of noise, limits on whatever. So if it's tied into the conditional use criteria, you can do that. And then the third option is if any one of the criteria, safety, drainage, environmental, any of those scale and intensity, if in your majority decision you determine that it doesn't meet that criterion, then you are required by the ordinance to deny the application. So that's pretty much my scoping of what you're going to be doing.
Okay. So if the next steps, I think, would be, one would like the petitioners to explain what you're going to want to do, and why you want to do it, and how you're going to do it. And some of that information is in your application. Some of it, quite truthfully, at least for me, was I got lost in what you want to do. And so if you can kind of just say, here's what we want to do, here's the window, because it's not clear in my mind that in your application you came out and said, this is what we want to do. So help us do that. And as George said, hopefully, two things, copious notes tonight on what questions we're asking and things we need to see. The other thing is this will, for everybody, all your friends who couldn't make it tonight, this will be on the YouTube channel sometime tomorrow. So you get to watch it all over again and get more, what do they say, what do they mean by that? And then thirdly, George can help you answer any questions specifically. So if you would, start off by introducing yourselves and your address, and then you may present the way.
I'm Glenn Hewitt, 24 Winter Lane.
Okay?
I'm Ken Hewitt, 24 Winter Lane, Fairhaven.
Okay. To the owners?
Fairhaven Holdings LLC.
Okay.
And has Sterling Engineering.
Okay, good.
So, we got the floor now.
You have the floor. Please talk.
Thank you, George, that was very informative about what you said for all that stuff, that's great.
Would you do me just one favor? Talk into the mic.
Talking to the mic.
When you can move, the mic moves, so you can bring it closer to you and move it back and forth. But that way, when we capture it, anybody who's not here, or if tomorrow, you have to say, well, what did we say there?
Sure.
You will be able to hear it. Please go ahead.
So, It's a little bit different than last time. Last 2 years ago, we were here, and this is all new to me now. But thanks for clearing up a lot of stuff that we got going on. We would have done this a little bit differently, but we're looking to expand. We had 9 sites when we started, pretty much. We expanded, I think, 3 years ago. We bumped it to 36 sites, excuse me. And now, we built the building and stuff like that, the facility, and now we're looking to expand another 112 sites, I believe. So, we had a hard time with that. We actually had it up to, I think it was 230-something sites. We scaled it down for reasons of, keeping more open properties and stuff like that, because the state requires 1,000 square feet per unit. So we're actually proposing 4,000 square feet per campsite instead of 1,000 square feet per campsite. So it's a little bit more spread out, because people like to have bigger areas and stuff like that. A lot of stuff, we're having problems with people coming in with humongous units, 30, 40 foot units, 45 foot units, 2 vehicles, whatever they got, bringing with them. We have tiny houses that are trying to come into the park as well. I don't even know what to do with them. They're not a house, they're not a camper, they're not this, they have pitched roofs, they have a whole rigmarole that comes with that. There's no, nothing that the town has for that. I don't even know if the state has anything for that, adopted anything for the tiny house movement, you say, at this point in time. But, yeah, we're just looking to do that, and obviously, we're looking to, for the time-wise, as far as length of stay, it's too short of a time. People are coming in for traveling nurses, they're looking for a 13-week stays. Okay, so we have and then they add on, we say, sorry, it's past our time or whatever, then you can't stay longer. So, and that's, it hinders the business as far as that goes. I mean, with 37 sites, you're only open for a couple months. That's hard to make a living. It's hard to bring in your business within that amount of time. We're not, it's just not big enough for us to do that, that's all. So we're looking to expand, so we can hire employees. We've been working ourselves for the past 9 years, and we're looking to hire people on, and to do that, we have to expand. So, it would be nice to be able to get extended for, I don't know how we would do that. It's not a mobile home park, nor do I want it a mobile home park. But that's what we're looking at for, as far as that goes. So,
A lot of the clientele that we have,
Can you just talk into the mic, please?
it's a very quiet campground. I would say most of the clientele that we have are traveling nurses, or somebody who has bought or sold a house and is looking for someplace to stay while they're looking around for something. Or they have, a lot of people have a house someplace else and their husband has a job in the area for a certain amount of months. So I would say most of the people that we have are not transit. So it's kind of tough, the seasonal wise, especially with the traveling nurses. They're calling to come in and we're already closed, or we can't, stay open for them. And there's a lot of that coming in. Yeah, there's a ton. And so the stuff that we're looking to accommodate would be more seasonal than transit. So they're coming in and it's staying in. And again, we're making huge sites with trees. These people are looking for ginormous pieces of property. And so we're trying to accommodate that for them, because that's almost all we have phone calls for, so.
And we're not looking for, we don't do any tenting over there. There's no tenting, there's no people, if you see a tent on there, that's somebody that came in with their RV and they put a tent up for the kids or something like that. We don't do any tenting over there. It's too loud. I don't want to stay up till midnight yelling at kids and stuff like that with their fire and stuff like that. That's not what we do over there, so. That's the gist of what we got going on.
Okay. Anything else you want to add? I guess kind of just, and what I'd like to do, what I'll follow up is, I'll kind of run quickly through what the ordinance says, what we believe is what you were approved at. And so one of the questions we're going to have is, are you following the ordinance now? So when we talk about extending, it tells you there's 90 days and all that other stuff. So That's gonna be a key question to answer. And there's some other ordinance things, and then George has written, as he said, has written out some comments on, which have you seen that? Have we given, have you?
I have the one for the fire chief.
Yeah,
Sent
the
it.
email?
Email from fire chief.
Yeah. Well, I think we have.
I can respond to that, too.
Give them a copy.
You're talking about the draft findings?
Yes.
Um,
Was that on the website?
It's on the website.
But if you would just, because I think that return the package, it might be in there.
Oh, yes, you're right.
So for all the folks in the audience, what George is gonna give them, for every meeting we prepare for the petitioners, George prepares a package of information for that meeting. And so it includes what the petitioner filed, his comments that we're talking about in this case. So, for today's meeting, if you go to the town website, town calendar, to August, you'll see, it'll say planning board meeting, and the package will be linked to that. So you get an opportunity to kind of read the things that we're talking about for the next meeting. It'll be generally the week before. So whatever a week before, and our meetings are generally always the first Wednesday of the month. So you'll get a chance, and we'll go through these today, so you get a chance to hear some, just one reason, this gives you a chance to review that stuff, and then petitioner review it, you'll hear what our concerns are on all of this kind of stuff. So if it's okay with the planning board, I'll kind of go through the ordinance, and then kind of George's comments. I'll throw in my comments, and then you all will get a chance to respond to those tonight, and maybe some of my stuff and all of it is questions, so you might be able to put the questions to bed this evening, or if not, you get another shot at it here in the future, and then we'll go to the four members of the planning board to your thoughts, concerns, questions for the petitioner. So this is kind of prepping you so please take good notes and take a look at the TV thing there. So I will go through the campground. I won't read it to you, but the campground, section 5.8 of our land use ordinance is specifically for campgrounds. And I'll just kind of go through some of the highlights. So a campground has to be on at least 20 acres of land, and all camping units or structures have to be at least 100 feet from any property line, at least 400 feet from any resident, except residents belong to the campground owners. So a general comment for the petitioners is, we need, at least, and I think we all need, bigger sets of plans. So the stuff that you provided is an 8.5 by 11. What we require or need is something that's like 24 by 30. So Tyler's got young eyes, he can probably read that stuff. I do not, but it's more than just that. We want to be able to measure and say, is it 100 feet? And some of the things that we'll talk about this evening, we need to know, is it at least 400 feet from a residence? So not a barn, not a shed or whatever, but from the house is the end of the campsite within 400 feet of, and we can only do that with big plans. And there's some other information that we'd like to see on the plans. And I think, and I don't want to take on the second A, but I think you've hired somebody who's done some drawings, hopefully.
Yeah, we have these prints, that's why we sent a PDF, so you guys could look at it.
If you would just provide whatever number of copies we need.
That's fine. If we provided 10, 8.5 by 11, so we provided whatever the town wanted at this point in time.
Okay.
If you wanted these, we would give it to you.
Okay, so yeah, so big.
That's not a problem, we can do that.
I appreciate that cooperation. So we talked about that. So they can't campsites can't be inside of public roads, navigable rivers, existing residences, including from the second floor or approved subdivision. And if they are, you gotta landscape it. And so take a look at.
Have you seen this map? I have it right here.
I have, but
Okay.
But I need to see it bigger and show me that show us, this isn't just for John, but they show us that generally if it was a subdivision, you would draw a line that's 100 feet from the property line. And if there was a house, there would just be something that says this is 450, 500, 600 feet from the back of your lot. So look, just the more information you can give us, the faster the process goes and easier. Not guaranteeing that it passes, just it makes it easier to get us to an end. Okay, you can't sleep in vehicles. You can't have more than 11 campsites per acre. I don't think that's an issue even when you get up to 148. And you can't cover more, your campsite roads and social can't cover more than 20%. So this, what that says is that you cut out a campsite, or 148 of them, you cut out roads, you've got a swimming pool in there, you've got some other stuff that are in there, so that the total square footage of those things cannot be more than 20% of, and the other, I guess the real question is, how many acres are we talking about? I could not, and it may be on one of the drawings, but I couldn't read it, so I can read it on a bigger set. So if it's 41 acres, and that means about 8 acres of what I would call disturbed. Okay, but disturbed, you cut, it's a place to park, it's the roads, it's the pools, it's the cell towers, all that other kind of stuff. And we can, certainly George is available to say what was he talking about in that. You're not on any ponds or rivers, so you don't have to go up 250 feet back. You're not in a resource protection zone. I'm going through G. You do have to provide, and I know you've got a plan for it, provide water and sewage systems, sanitation, so on and so forth. That has to meet the regulations of the state plumbing code, of the state of Maine Human Services, and then it talks about how many toilets, and I know you're doing the RV has one, so I think that counts, so that's probably not an issue. But what is important is, not at this stage, but when we get, I think, to the final plan set, which is the site plan review that George is referring to, we do need to have good plans that tell us, what size pipe you're running and a whole bunch of other stuff. So we'll need more detail, and that may be there, again, in what you've done already, but I'm just kind of giving you a heads up. If it's not, that's something you'll need to plan on, and that's something the code enforcement person is going to be looking for. I've already talked to him about that. And so one of the issues that you are having is, that you've discussed, is a time limit is placed on the occupancy of any one camping space or continuing basis for 12 weeks for the period of May 15th to September 15th, 2 weeks for other times, so on and so forth. And you didn't tell us what you want. You said you wanted more time, but how much is more time? So are you talking 365 days a year?
Well,
So,
we're already open 365 days a year.
okay, but you're limited to how long?
Well, we have 9 sites that are grandfathered, so we do 9 year-round campsites over there.
Okay,
So we have,
and let me stop you there. When you say they're grandfathered, show us something that, if it was before the date of the ordinance, that's grandfathered, but
it was way before the day of the
okay, so if you kind of just work with George, say these 9 were established in 1937.
Yeah, hold up, so are we going backwards to what we were doing for the campsites that we have now, for that, or are we working for the expansion part? How is this working?
Both.
You have,
So-
you have to,
So we have to prove what we have now to be able to expand further, or how does this work?
you have to realize that once something has been approved, then you come in for basically a revision.
Right, an extension of the.
Right.
Yeah.
You are subject to us reviewing it back to all the details.
Sure,
And that burden of proof is yours.
sure. And you guys already have that all the information, from what we did before. That's already in the town, it's in the folder.
Right.
So,
If we've got it,
I just don't want to waste your time and, go around the mulberry bush the whole time. So I'm trying to get my head around what we're doing, because all the questions that you just asked have already been done. So before we got to this meeting before, we met with the planning board, the city planner, no, it wasn't the city planner, it was code enforcement officer. We went through all this stuff, setbacks, this, that, the other thing, and we already did all that stuff. And then we approached you guys, and now we're reading the same thing back to us that we've already done.
well, as long as it's there, we can see it. I mean, if those plans are there, if you work with Mr. Kabarge and say, so that he has seen it, we've seen it.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to spend more money or anything like that. Part of it is also, we get people who come in who are violating what they said they were gonna do. I'm not saying that's what you're gonna do, but, you know, trust but verify is
Sure.
what we're trying to do.
Okay.
So I won't talk to you about cemeteries, so that kind of covers the ordinance and what our expectation there is. And then I will go through some of the same things again, and this is intended for you all to say, hey, you know, show us where that stuff is, make sure we've got it, or some of this new stuff. So when you come back for the next meeting, whatever, we've seen it, and we're all good to go, because this will move just as quickly as you provide us the information. So in the package that you've got, something called conditional use, approval, decision, finding of facts. And as Mr. Demarge said at the beginning of this, we'll go through these individually. So the first is 7.4, that's the criteria. First one is public health impacts. And so you can see Mr. Demarge's comments there, things that based upon what you've said, you are gonna provide sewer, correct me if I'm wrong, you'll provide sewer hookups, you're gonna have a sewer collection piping system, and then probably the only time I was right on math was when we talked about 148 total. Want to make sure if you're adding 112 that, you know, whatever number of septics you're running to, or sewers you're running to that, toilets, whatever, that it works. And I did not understand the math on what the heck was it? I wrote it down here somewhere. A park trailer model, which is apparently almost twice as much waste coming out.
Yeah, with the same amount as the, yeah, that's the thing.
So what we want to make sure is that when the math totals up,
Yeah,
that if whatever it is,
Yeah.
that you're not exceeding that. So,
right.
you know, it's a little chart to say, and your consultant did a nice job of saying, if you put in 3 of these, you can have 4 of those,
Sure, yeah.
or 1 of those, whatever.
And
So
that's in the principle.
Yeah, that's the
yeah,
thing.
and so we just want to
Sure, yeah.
make sure all that, we understand what that stuff is.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you get out there and the code enforcement guy says, wait a minute, you got 10 park trailer models.
Yeah.
It's not gonna support that. That just keeps everybody out of
Those are
trouble.
ones that we're-
And you talked about, and it's a good time to ask about it, the state has a rule, so there are rules that the state has, I think it was 1,000 square feet or something like that for a trailer
Mhm.
lot size or campground lot size. So you get licensed by these are questions, you get licensed by the state, you have to meet those requirements as well. Okay? It was hard for me on the set of, again, and hopefully it'll happen on the bigger plans. Do your test pits line up where you're tentatively putting your septic fields? So your consultant ran out, I can't remember, 13, 18 test pits, but there were areas that didn't perk correctly. So we just want to make sure as we're going through this, because again, it becomes a public health issue. Well exclusion areas, there's some cases where it looked like the septic fields overlapped well exclusion areas. So we're gonna need to see on the plan that the well exclusion, the septic field is outside the well exclusion area. So I guess one of the plans that did, just take a look at that for us.
It's on the print as well.
Okay, it may have overlapped differently. So when you get to the code enforcement guy, when you get the final design, is gonna want to see more details on the, you know, rather than just hand designed flow test you've done. Are you comfortable that I guess in code enforcement guy, you had one flow test on a drilled well, is there some documentation that says wherever we go, how many wells are you gonna have, and do they all have the correct water pressure flow?
We have, we drilled 6 wells when we first bought the place, and we didn't have water. Now we've exercised all these wells. We have 3 wells that we're not using on the property now that are suffice. The well individuals, I said, well, I'd like to get you come down to write a letter for this, and they said, we can write a letter, but we're not gonna guarantee water flow, which I wouldn't either. The water could go dry next week or next month or next year, they're not gonna do that, so. I don't know what the whole water flow process would be.
They need to take a look, what have we done in the past, or do we get a letter on sufficient water?
If there
The
is
first
a-
campground that's coming.
Yeah,
for a
if
while.
there's a question in terms of the sufficiency of water for either portable water supplies or fire protection. Then, and the water source is groundwater wells, you can require the applicant to get a hydrologist to indicate what the water availability is.
We've already done
Right,
that.
Okay,
But that was
Get it.
years ago.
yeah, get it to us, and,
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
you know, hopefully the wells haven't gone dry.
No,
So-
we
We have plenty of water
exercise
this
them,
year.
plenty of water, yeah. No, we exercise them, and still, even if we just drain them or whatever.
Excellent.
it's-
Okay, those are George's and my comments. Anybody else on the board have any on public health impacts? Questions, comments? I think we want to try to get it to these folks today so that they can point out either they submitted it before or they can get it to us.
I think your comment about the septic and the wells was mine. I think mine was specifically about this drawing that was in the packet. Cause this, I believe, is
That's
also.
actually an electrical print is what that is. That's electrical schematic of all the transformers and how we're gonna run electrical through there.
Okay, so
That's SGR system.
this is not a wellhead, that seems like the setback overlaps a septic field?
What's that now?
This is-
Yes, that septic is not, that septic is wrong, correct.
Okay,
Yeah, that septic sets back. If you look at the other print that was sent by Bonnie Cobb, that was done by the engineers, they messed up on the topos on that.
okay,
So that septic field is outside of that. You're correct, yeah.
okay,
So
so,
this is a
yeah,
good time to fix those kinds of errors, so that when we get the next set, we don't,
Well, it's-
because what's gonna happen is 10 years from now,
They all have to be, you know, when you go to the state for permitting, you have to have it GPS located, or septic system GPS located and all that stuff, so we'll have to do
Okay,
show us,
this
it's not
is
like you've got
probably
it,
one.
correct drawing, get us that. And if it shifts a little
that. Yeah,
bit,
that's one of the drawings.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the drawing, yeah. So it takes, believe it or not, it takes a long time to get the engineers to draw prints and come back with things, stuff like that, as you probably know in the past, so. It
I
takes a while.
used to build nursing homes,
Yeah.
residential, yeah, so
Yeah,
I know,
It's like electrical panels, like 46 weeks out right now, so
What?
it's.
it's trying, we're giving you as much information as we can, so that, you know, you.
Right, and this is not gonna be a overnight thing, it's gonna be phased, it'll be 30 sites one year, or 40 sites another year, it's not gonna be, you know,
we're
not gonna
looking
come
for
in with
that.
100 people and do this thing.
But then that begs the question of, but the play, if you're asking for, particularly when you get a site review, you're asking for approval for 136 more.
Right.
Those plans, whether you're only gonna build the first 30, the 130, the area for
I
136.
gotcha, we're still,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I gotcha.
Perfect, I'm happy with that. Anybody else on?
We got wetland delineations and all that stuff, and all that stuff.
Yes, I appreciate you getting those in early. We have a question on one of those. Tyler?
no, I think definitely all the information's here, I think just being really dense, just having like much clearer labels on each one for what we should be looking for on, which I know like when I look into more detail, it is there. I just like knowing that this is electric and I should not be looking at the septic on this one drawing, and I should only be looking at septic on this other drawing.
So they
Probably
don't
be-
get ready to get you.
right.
gotcha.
And you're welcome, when you do the next presentation, kind of walk us through that. I mean, with the bigger ones will help, but if there's that kind of stuff, so. Tyler, anything else? Right?
I know John asked for a summary for the next meeting of what you've done in the past, but can you just quickly just go through what you were presenting to the planning board in your last time you were here?
2 years
So-
ago.
Yeah, so basically we bought the place 9 years ago. We bought the place 9 years ago, and it had 9 year-round campsites on it. And it had 47 sites or 52 sites that were basically abandoned sites, so that it fell into disarray and stuff like that. And we went to the planning board and asked them to reopen 37 of the 50-something sites, because we didn't, you know, the campers back in the 70s and 80s, they were really dinky and they're small. We tried to manage what we had, 2 sites for one, stuff like that. So that's what we went for the planning board, to reopen the old sites, is what we did.
Okay.
We just basically cleared brush and cleared stuff and went from there. And we put, I don't think they had water, they didn't do water or electric on the sites either, so we bumped all of them up to 50 amps. So every site is 50 amp, 20, 30, 50 amps, and water, sewer, and electric on all sites. Yeah, instead of just having 9 sites that, we couldn't do.
And the sites that we're gonna be putting in, we're actually using old logging roads, if that's any help, and then just going off of those old logging roads. 'Cause we love the trees, we love the woods, and I was surprised when we were out looking and just trying to figure out what we were doing. We're really not using the main part of where, there's trails and people are walking and, the real beauty of it. I would say it was in an area that wasn't so great, and so, again, we're using old logging roads. So we figured that would at least cut down on, on tree cutting and
Sure.
things like that. So if we're just going off of that, and we are making these huge. So it is leaving a huge amount of trees and boulders and all kinds of stuff in between. So that's what we're going for.
Hold that thought, because we're gonna get to roads after this. So that,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay, I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little bit of history, just quickly while we're here. I know it sounds like you're gonna provide something more substantial at the next meeting, but you also mentioned that it's catering more to traveling nurses. So are these RVs that are there now that these folks rent, or they're
Nope,
bringing?
They're bringing them in. So these traveling nurses are coming from.
Can we hold
Oh,
that?
sure.
I'm sorry.
Yep, that's
Let's-
okay.
Let's stick to that.
I wasn't sure where.
I had some of the similar questions,
Sure, yeah,
but I
yeah.
wanna kind of,
Yeah, that's
if we start wandering, my mind will be all over the place.
sure, yeah.
So we kind of stick to the going through the findings of fact, but I do want to get, those are good questions that we need to get back to. Anything else on public health?
That's it.
Okay, then let's move over to, traffic safety impacts. And, so kind of going through that quickly, Tony Fontaine, MDOT, so there's a couple of things. I see 2 entrances onto your property.
Yes.
Okay, one that I think is, and unfortunately, the big plan, we could show it, but one comes off 136, I think it's where the mailboxes are,
Mhm.
and kind of
That's the
curves
main-
back up, sort of,
That's,
it ends in the general direction of the pool. There's another one to the north of that that comes to a house or something
Yeah,
there.
it's,
so one's an entrance and one's a driveway.
Okay,
There is a difference.
the driveway goes to the farmhouse that we own and rent. And
okay.
then the other one is the main entrance for the campground. So it's a weird property.
Is there, because the way I read the comments is, is there or have you worked with MDOT on the couple things? One is the big one, the entrance, if you will.
Yeah, we got
And we've got
Yeah.
comments from that. How about the driveway? Because there's such things as driveway permits. Have you talked to Tony? I'd ask that you do, because if it's not on it.
For the driveway, for what now? For the house
For the
itself?
house. Now, he may tell you his grandfather, like he did for your entrance,
Okay.
but you do need a driveway. permit.
Okay.
Yeah, so just have him,
Okay. Double check that. Okay, we did the other one. but we did-
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And then the question would be, how do people how do you keep others from using it? Is it a
It's
way
a different address, and there's no way they can even get in.
they can't get from the campground out that way? You've got some way of blocking,
There's trees in there, that'd be something if they could get it out.
so there's no,
They can't get
Okay,
in.
that's fine.
Yeah, and if they do,
Yeah,
they're wrecking their camper.
they reckon they can.
okay, well, that brings up
But
another,
that's
sorry, because you can see I'm wandering around.
No, that's
One
good.
of the things we'll need to do between now and hopefully the next meeting
Mhm.
is a site visit. So
Sure.
we'll coordinate that with you, the members of the planning board, the fire chief will be there, and the road commissioner, the
Okay.
public works director, which is his title, will be there, and that's a chance to look at those kinds of things.
Mhm.
And you can show us the trees that are in the way, and then some of these other things that are coming up.
Yep.
You can talk, it's better to be on site and see it, so we will schedule that. Okay, so the email covers, there's some grandfathering on that. And did you talk to the MDOT guy about the size of the increase? Because you probably triple or will triple if it's approved, the number of campsites. You talked about initial 136.
We didn't talk to DOT about anything for regulations, stuff like that, for this particular thing. We talked to him about the entrance expansion for last time, and he said it's not a driveway, it's an entrance, and we'll say, I have that in the paperwork as well.
Okay, and so help me clarify that in my mind. You've got 36 campsites using the entrance now. You're gonna go to 148.
Yeah.
So NDOT, if it's grandfathered for whatever number, that's one thing. If you're significantly changing the use, which might include, so you need to ask him this, which might include tripling the number of campsites. So I go back to him so that it's clear, because that's what we're gonna wanna know, is that he's okay with 148. So an email as you got from that last one would be fine. So yes, I consider that when I did this.
It probably doesn't matter right now, but when we did buy the place, the last owner had put in to get 150 sites.
They don't get
No.
Yeah, if
And
he's-
everything went,
This is
you
the
had,
one.
we'd have to go read through.
And if
go back
MDOT
through it,
says
they
yes,
had
they
it
can
done.
hand-
Yeah, okay.
Because I'll say for a campground, RV
Yeah.
park, X number of vehicles are gonna come out of there. You've got what you need.
Sure, yeah.
We
We're talking
will,
about Tony Fontaine.
I think that's your, it doesn't have to be him, but somebody from MDOT. So if he's, I think I'm dealing with him on a church deal.
Yeah,
but,
no, I've dealt with him before, he's fine.
Super. There was something else about the set of plans, we have run into an issue before, just down the road from you, and you may have seen that MDOT came back and did some clearing to approve an entrance of a new subdivision. So we're gonna wanna know, in your land use consultant, all we need to see on a set of plans is, I don't know what the right distance is, but it's the right distance. Okay, so, I'm sorry, so this is 130 feet this way, whatever it is, 130 feet that way, line of sight that you meet this line of sight requirements.
We have a Google map on here that shows distance in 5 feet.
Yeah, and if you just put that on the plans, that would, have your guy just
It's already on.
say that on the plans,
On the plans?
on the plans. He should be able to just take that plan and draw a line of sight distance. Yeah, that's,
What document here says that there's 500 feet of sight distance?
Google Maps, Google Maps shows, whichever one. It's green, shows the houses, you wanted to have the entrances for roads, driveways that are from the campground, right here.
Okay, I think you're misunderstanding what sight distance is. So sight distance is when you come out at the entrance, there's a specific safety standard that says you have to be able to see at least a certain distance based on the speed limit, which is 50 miles an hour there. So generally, it's, I don't know, so many feet per 10 miles an hour in both directions. And it's not just looking down at an air photo, it's looking at the topography, because there's a hill which could cut down the sight distance. There could be obstructions that cut down the sight distance. So there's a specific formula that you look at, where a traffic engineer or a surveyor can measure what are the official sight distances for someone pulling out of there. That's what he's talking about.
it happened with that, so this subdivision, as NDOT had come along late here, and they had already approved it, and it was not meeting their standards. They had to come back, and I kept Wind Gardens or whatever the
Have you
subdivision.
seen this before?
Wind-
Is this acceptable for that or not?
It doesn't give any topographical or site analysis. It's just a picture, it's an air photo.
Yeah, it should be on the plans.
On the big plans
Yes.
for 400
Yeah,
and
and I think he'll stamp it and sign it, and so on and so forth.
It's your burden to show that that's safe and it meets the safety standards.
What was the footage, 450 feet?
No, they didn't.
Don't know.
Yeah, Tony can
Well,
tell
there is-
you,
there is-
and your engineer, the guy who did your work should know that.
There are MDOT standards for safety. And basically what we're understanding is MDOT says this is grandfathered. John is asking for clarification. You're proposing to add 112 sites. Does that trigger a DOT permit or not? My interpretation of the email is he's saying that change in use does not require it. Is that what you understand?
The fact that
Is
you're
that what you're
adding,
saying, or is that what you're saying?
No, what I interpreted the MDOT email that you submitted, he said that they have no record of a permit ever having been issued.
Since
correct?
late eighties, correct.
Yep, so they don't have any record that that was ever permitted by
Correct.
them. And he also went on, that he says what you're proposing doesn't require a permit?
Correct, it's classified as an entrance.
Right.
I-
So,
yeah.
so according to MDOT standards, and typically, if you think about it, they look at things like shopping centers, big subdivisions, those things, that triggers,
Sounds like an old-fashioned
Right, it says
This-
right here,
this
therefore does
particular
not require
use-
a permit.
right, this
Neither
particular
does-
use does not require a permit.
Correct.
So all that document says is MDOT hasn't regulated in the past, and there's nothing that says they're gonna regulate it now.
Right, and I'll
But that
clarify
doesn't
with
say,
Tony
that
again,
doesn't,
if
but
that's-
that,
if
but
that's
that doesn't say that it's safe.
Yeah, and this goes back, so there's two things. This goes back to 2016. So now you're changing the use by adding
A lot, yeah, more
well, a whole bunch more traffic. And if he's good, he sends an email, says
Then
it's
it's all
good,
good.
don't worry about that part. The other question that he needs to answer, and he's doing this with me with the Union Church Committee, I'm sorry. So if you're not familiar with Union, you probably know where Union Old Town Hall is and stuff. It's a big wide open space that I almost got killed pulling out of the other day. But it was grandfathered, but some of the uses may have changed, the frequency of use may have changed. So he's gonna take a look and say, okay, where can you, there's a certain right of way which doesn't impact, but he's also gonna look at what is the line of sight that we're talking about. So when we may have to create an entrance there and X number of feet in either direction, they have to be able, people pulling out to see. And so that's the other, there's two pieces to that, if you will. So, I think that was that question. And then like bouncing around and I
No, thank
wasn't.
you for clarifying, at least when we're asking.
That's what we're here for tonight, so
He gave me
please.
a hard time last time, I said, it's an entrance, not this, I said, can you please write down?
He's probably very good at what he does.
Oh, yeah.
And he knows what he's doing, but that's the bottom
Well, we
line.
were trying to get it in writing because we knew we would need it, yeah, that's
And
right.
just tell them that the planning board needs it,
Okay.
and they're very good about doing that. Please not a phone, we talked to Tony on the phone, it's okay?
Oh,
That's not.
okay.
So, and then you might ask them about, I'm not trying to, raise a sleeping dog, but also is the driveway permitted? If it's been there forever, he may very well say,
We did that.
that's grandfathered, if you've got something that says that's okay,
I'll give him that.
Yeah,
I
just-
mean,
the more you get, more kind of information, the better. So, okay, now sticking strictly to traffic safety, did you all have anything? If not, I'm gonna ask the planning board members if they have anything.
One concern that comes to my mind is, you had mentioned possibility of some of these RVs being 45 feet, pulling out onto a state highway that has a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. They are not gonna gain 50 miles an hour very fast.
No.
And they're gonna be coming out there slow, and I question that, about safety, about coming up on somebody that's doing 15 miles an hour, and they're just trying to get up to speed, but the guy behind you is doing 50, and he's right on your bumper. And it's how we control that, or how the state controls that. Many times when they have something like that, they have an addition, the state provides an additional lane, slow lane. Or if you're looking
An
at,
XL lane or
Right.
an XL lane to get out, decel lane to slow it. So those are all good, he's absolutely right, those are good questions to ask, say, hey, 7 years ago, 20 years ago,
just cars coming
there
out.
was some guy with a tent in the back of his,
Now they're huge.
whatever. So just the more deep, because what none of us want
We
is,
don't want it to be unsafe, yeah.
you don't want somebody getting clipped because,
They're going too
whatever.
slow and everything's
So-
I mean, with the gravel pits, many times there's a sign that says trucks entering, so at least people are aware of it.
It's slow, yeah, something to warn you
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
And ask them if the sign, sometimes signage will help, will
The
alleviate.
key is the sight distance, because
It
if
is.
someone's driving 50 miles an hour, they see the RV, they slow down.
Well,
If they come up over a rise and they don't see it, that's when you get.
Or they speed up, get as close as they can, look at the bird and honk. Because
But
that happened to me the other day at
we can
Union
do
Church.
extra.
So, just the more
I'd
information
rather
you
do
give him,
extra and have it safer.
he may very well just say, we'll need to add a sign now. So I just throw that out there. Anything else? I'm sorry, on traffic safety, we'll try to keep this moving a little bit. So the next one is public safety impacts, which is fire primarily. And we get back to, so kind of going through George's comment, there's no school. Okay, the applicant has stated that no buildings are associated with the expansion that we, and I've talked to the chief about this, Chief Tripp, who's our fire chief. And so he's gonna want to see some more additional information, so I would strongly recommend you work with the fire chief, Rob Tripp, who's a great guy to work with, and say, here's what we wanna do, and Rob will say, okay, I'm interested in that, or here's what you've gotta do. And we will be very interested and take under his comments very seriously.
Rob Tripp?
Rob Tripp, and he's the fire chief, so he's at the fire station.
He's already voiced some concerns.
He has, yeah, he's already,
He
his,
did, am I supposed to comment here with that, or should I just deal with him directly, or for that? or-
hold tight, let me go through these, and then you'll get a chance, and we'll do some more. But yes, so if he and I exchanged emails today, and so he's got some, and he may have answered some of them, and if he hasn't, just work closely with him. So we talked, and Jordan, you started talking about, hey, there's existing roads. So we are gonna be very concerned about the width of those roads, and are they all weather roads? Because if an RV catches fire way in the back,
Yep.
he's gonna wanna get his, and I know you all do too, so he's gonna wanna be able to get his truck back there. He's gonna wanna have, they'll talk to you about fire ponds, where can he get water to put it out? You do have some structures down there, so that, the chief is, get the chief, his big, chief's approval on this. Calvin Bomier is our public works director. If there's questions on roads, with the roads, so on and so forth, he's a great resource to talk to as well. So that whole internal drive system, so, is it one-way traffic? Are you gonna allow parking that'll block? Those are all questions that he's gonna wanna, how do you control that kind of stuff? The cell tower is on the property, and you have there's an easement to let the cell tower folks get back there. This paragraph covers, what happens if the tower comes down, as unlikely as that may be. But microburst or whatever, there are rules with the cell phone tower about safe fall distance or whatever it may be. And my guess is they will tell you you can't put a campground within whatever that distance, so it's a 200-foot tower, it's gonna fall, the safe fall distance may be 300 feet. So the cell phone, we need a note from the cell phone tower owner that what your plan is, you're not gonna impact their falls, their, whatever they call it, fall zone. Does that make sense?
Is that in writing somewhere? Can we get that ordinance?
It is a concern that we have about safety, if that's what
So
you're
it's not an ordinance the town has as far as drop zone for
No,
cell towers?
It is, but they should have a rule on it.
The cell tower.
Cell tower guy will say, we don't want you to put any, and they may not know you're getting ready to do this,
Yeah,
and it may be less of an issue that it is a trailer
So
than it is a
they-
building.
so we need to get a structural engineer for the cell tower
No,
for drop
no.
zone?
The,
I
what
guess
I'm
I'm
saying,
confused on that. What are we talking about now?
you go to the cell phone company, should be able to sell and say that you can't build and have maybe a trailer within X number of feet of this. Does that make sense? So they should tell you what the safe distance is. You don't have
Because
to,
they think, because you think that their cell tower's gonna fall down?
yeah, no, I did it with, I had to do it with huge power transmission lines and
So.
cell towers
It's,
before.
it's also an issue,
Structural
it's
engineer
also,
issue with the cell tower?
it's also an issue of the equipment falling off the tower. So they're up there putting up equipment
Sure.
and some big 40-foot antenna falls. Is there any campsite within that danger zone?
And they'll tell you what that is.
They'll probably have trees all over the place. I guess I'm confused
If-
with this.
if he- Yeah, but
For
If-
future,
if-
is what it's asking.
Well, exactly, so just have them say it's 200 feet, 300, I have no idea, so don't take my
Yeah.
numbers.
Right.
But he
So
said,
if they say So whatever they say is what the town's gonna adopt?
Exactly.
The
Okay,
board,
so
the
is
planning board.
that- So you're
will-
transferring liability on to the South Tower guys, is that what's this?
Well, it keeps you and your people safer. So if you're
Because
inside the fall
is
zone,
this
it's
an
a
issue?
fall zone.
Okay, so.
So they'll just tell you, it's pretty simple, he ought to be able to say.
Next question.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And
So
so,
I don't think you'd want an RV parked within 50 feet of the cell phone tower.
or longer, or, yes.
In case
We have RVs that are parked within 50 feet of the South Tower.
you
It was
do.
already there,
Mhm.
on
Yeah, we do.
you know.
And if they come back and tell us it's safe,
And our insurance
Not
company,
mine,
our insurance
We
company is.
understand what you're saying, but it's, it was already
you
there,
know,
we bought it like
Right,
that.
we
so
have
it's not-
insurance for that.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
that's-
obviously, if we think the South Tower is gonna fall down, we're having an issue with this one.
if I understand what you're saying. Just like I had an issue about the high tension wire not falling down, and I still had to, you know,
Had
go
to go
do
back.
it. And back then, they made me pay, but the cell phone tower got, me and my company paid. So just get us that information, and it should, hopefully it's just as simple as
Yeah.
as an email. And then I guess the same thing is, what kind of, and you ask them, say, we're gonna put in another 130 some sites. Is there, let me ask a question first, is there any kind of fencing, locked gate?
Yes, there's a fence all over. it.
Okay, so we'll see that on the site, so that may
We
answer.
don't make anything off the South Tower.
That's not ours.
That's not, we don't make a dime off that South Tower. So don't think that we're running big, you know, there's nothing.
It's a safety issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just for your,
Well,
because
we're
our,
transferring liability to the South Tower people, I understand, and that's what it is with insurance and stuff like that. So my insurance company did the rigmarole, and, you know, we're paying for insurances for whatever it is.
exactly, I got it, but the fact,
We'll call it, yeah, we'll call it Crown
And
Castle.
We
if-
understand.
if
I guess
they're-
it's
if-
not-
you've got it, it sounds like there's
Deal
a
with.
system to keep kids from,
Yeah.
or drunk,
It's all locked.
60-year-olds.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
worse than my
Yeah,
case,
I'll-
70-year-old.
See
We talked about the fall zone, so any other questions from you all on safety?
I just wanted to, so this is just a general safety thing, which is 7.4, goes through all the impacts. So it's still like, this is sort of a gray area where the planning board can say like, we are all concerned about the cell tower shadow zone and would be a reason why we think you could not move forward with it. But it's also, if they say it's 200 feet, but you say, but these are mitigations, this is what the cell tower company says, when it comes down to it, there still could be a vote where people think you've done enough to make that not a significant liability.
Right. Well, it's not up to me, it's whatever
Yeah.
I mean, I have no control over
I get what
the
you're
South
saying,
Tower
I get what
like
you're
that.
saying, yeah.
No.
Okay, good, anything else on safety? And I guess the other thing is internal roads, 148, how do you, a concern would be, and we could look at it, kids walking to or from the pool, going to visit, you know, their friends down the road. That was a general comment that we probably should discuss either on site. How do we handle that? Or how do you handle it? What's going, now, I'm not talking about bike lanes or
Right.
anything like that,
Just
but,
making sure the road's wide enough for
Wide
everything,
enough.
is that other?
you know, and that's just something that I'm sure you're as interested as we are. Environmental, trying to keep this moving, environmental impacts. So here we're into wetlands, vernal pools. So I'll go through this pretty quickly. There are no vernal pools on the report. There are no streams on the report. And then it says, but there is a small vernal pool, just under 2,000 square feet, that appears to be a man-made pond between 136 and the gravel access road. Is that an old farm pond? Did somebody dug that? Do you know, or is that a vernal?
No, it's an old pond that, we had the EPA check that out, and they said we could fill that in if we wanted to.
Okay, so it's
Just
not
left
a,
it, it's-
I'm not asking you to do that because that begs where you can put your fire ponds. So that may be something you
Yeah,
wanna
it's
consider
not
as a
gonna be
fire.
fire pond either, so.
Okay.
It dries up.
Not a good fire pond.
Yeah,
Uh,
it'd be good.
But that's where, look, you know, we'll wanna know, and the chief will wanna know
where that is.
what that is. There is a wetlands system that is not referenced in the report, I don't think, but it shows on one of your drawings. It's a big one, a relatively good sized one. Is that a real wetland that shows on one of your drawings?
It's on the backside of the cell tower.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
The wetland report does not reference that. It references the the man-made pond near 136, but there's no reference to a large wetland system behind the cell tower.
Oh,
It shows on the map,
it should be.
shows on the map, but it's not.
He just doesn't, he
And
just
when we
doesn't,
were planning, we did plan that was there. and
You
so-
knew that?
Yes, and so we went, we measured and, tried to figure out. So,
I'm
yeah. So we were on board
overprotecting
with that,
is
Yeah,
good, but it's good to know
we were aware
that
of
it's
it.
labeled as a wetlands and all that
Yes,
other kind of stuff. He also mentioned in his report that was confusing to me, that he did not look at the eastern portion of the property. And so my question
We're
is,
just not expanding
We're
on
not going
We're
there.
not.
okay, could you draw something on a colored line that says, here's what he looked at versus what he looked
We
at?
should just get them.
It's on
Yeah.
that, it's on that, there's a line that says campground lot and
Okay.
campground lots.
And that's, and it was
And
clear,
It's clear. that
was
there's a line.
not clear in his report,
No.
so he just
It is
says,
on the map, okay, so when we
Okay.
get the bigger map to you, that it is clear. there's a
and
big
just
line.
explain that. Minimal clearing of trees, and we talked about no more than 20% of the area can be disturbed. So kind of keep, do some math to say that we're not, we're bringing in a 1,000-foot, whatever. Okay, so at future sites and roads, and I commend you for using what's there, but we're gonna be concerned about, is it an all-year surface? If you use it, if you close in the winter,
We close.
snow's not a problem.
Yeah, no,
But-
we close.
But if it rains 4 inches like it did a couple of days ago, then the fire trucks get back there.
Right.
Those are concerns that the chief will work with you on. Any other guys, any other questions on environmental impacts?
I don't have any.
Okay, moving on to scale and intensity of use. This is something your neighbors may want to comment on next time, as long as some of the other stuff. We talked about it, you need to show us where the closest, if all the houses are at least 400 feet from the campground,
Yeah.
is it
It is-
defined?
Yeah, it is way on the other side of anybody, but yes.
That's all we need to know,
Yeah.
that it's 100 feet from the property line. In the subdivision, you draw a setback line. If you put that 100 feet off, and we see there's no campgrounds, and these are not, I don't think, hard things
Yeah.
for your consultant to do. Any other questions on that one? Noise and hours of operation. So maybe this starts to get, because some of the questions that Brian had. You've listed your hours of operation in quiet time, and I appreciate all that. And then, okay, so this is more about noise and hours of operation. So do you plan to keep these and going forward, 9 to 9 for the?
It is the most ridiculously quiet campground when you get in there, because everybody, we're in bed by
Until-
9:30, 10 o'clock until, but the clientele that we're getting, we are all over it, and we plan to be all over it.
But you're gonna follow these hours?
Yeah, we're gonna follow those hours, and, we're out, we don't have to put out
So
fires.
your neighbors will get,
Yeah.
we'll see if they agree with you or not.
Yeah.
There's, okay, so one of the questions we want to have, that Brian started having, that maybe is another place to do it, and that you keep referring to is the nurses, because that gets into the definition.
Sure.
That's a bigger question, the definition of what you got, and we'll do that
Okay.
coming up, so. Right title or interest, you have to have sufficient right title and interest. You did provide a deed with some easements. The only thing, and this is a dot the I, cross the T kind of thing, is your certificate from the Secretary of State goes back to 2016. You can print one off the computer, that'll be 2023.
Oh, okay.
Just please do that.
So that's
Yeah, just,
just to update it.
yeah, it is,
Crazy, okay. that's-
believe me, I've been there when people
Yeah,
brought stuff
we
that
know
they
you're going
don't
to make the rules,
own.
yeah. it's like-
And they don't own to various planning commissions. And then the question, the entrance drive that's coming off of 136 mailboxes, entrance drive goes up, and then it goes past the pool, I guess, to the cell
To the
tower.
right, yeah.
Is that on your property, or is it on,
Is what on our property?
the entrance drive?
Yes.
Yes.
That's, okay, because one of the systems I looked at, it wasn't. So,
That would
We
be-
updated, when we got the survey done, we upgraded the town, so they should have this recent, they should have the recent print for the surveys and stuff like that.
and it'll show it on your property.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
we actually, I went to Calvin, and we got the Leisure Lane as a 911 address for town,
Good.
for the town.
Well, then you're gonna have to, I'm sure the chief, one of the things he'll bring up is, how do I know to go when I'm there? I hit 24 Leisure Lane, how do I know to get this campsite one? Where the heck is one?
Where is it? Okay.
And
He's only gonna go one way right up the top of the hill.
I know, but
We
he
put a
asked,
sign, there's a sign that saying campground.
he's gonna ask you,
Make sure it's all
I'm
labeled.
not, your competition up the road
Yep.
has given him a good map that lays out all that stuff, so he may ask you to do, or will probably ask you to do something like that.
Okay, yeah, like when people have a circle and these are the numbers on this circle, so
Yeah.
you're doing what to do.
136, whatever, so just I would ask, I'm not telling you have to do what they do, but
No,
get with
but
the
it's-
chief, and he's gonna ask you for that stuff, and we'll wanna make sure he's happy what he's given you.
Absolutely. No, that's fine.
Talked about the state certificate, any other questions on ownership? Financial and technical ability, okay, George, so there's a $25,000 discrepancy, we're gonna want an engineer estimate for this. What are we going to do on that? What's a recommendation from the planning board? The cost to build this out is $700,000, and Bangor Bank tells them $675, and then is this, subdivision, you have to bond it. There's no clear rule on bonding, escrowing, whatever, so.
So it's not a subdivision, but then again, we're doing this in phases as well, so we're gonna do 31 year, 41 year, so we're not gonna dish out, you can't get enough people to do it all at the same time.
Well, and then what I would recommend you do, so we're comfortable with this, is, I don't know, I'm trying to do the math here, but 30-something is 1/4 of 136, so that would be 1/4 of 700,000, and the money is there to do that. Does that make sense to you?
No.
No,
Okay.
sorry.
That's why I said, I don't know why you're talking about bonding, I mean, we're not, you guys are not taking over the roads, we're not
It
selling
doesn't matter.
lots off, we're not doing anything.
Doesn't
with that.
It doesn't matter,
So you need-
subdivisions do the
So
same.
you need to see
It's not
that money in there.
I guess, yeah, if you're gonna tell us that you're gonna do 40 lots a year, then that's 1/4 of whatever it is.
Okay,
So it's $50,000 the first year, then 2 years we're gonna do another one, it'll
okay,
be another 50,000.
okay.
So that we're comfortable that this project does not die in the time, subdivisions have died, there's, you go on to Granite Boulder Hill, where people are driving over ledges to get to their house.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
Can I just give a practical explanation? Okay, so you're proposing to put a water and sewer system throughout this site and build 5 very large septic systems, fields? Is it 5? I think it's 5,
I think so.
4 or 5. But in any case,
Sure.
those septic fields are going to be servicing 112 RVs, even if it's done in phases. So the board needs to be convinced that you have the financial capacity to build that infrastructure to support those campers, because if you don't and you come up short, some shortcuts might be taken in the piping, in
Yeah.
the fields, in the wells, and so
Yeah, I understand what
the
you're saying.
safety-
We're like, he's like overboard everything and.
the
I'm like,
safety
but I understand what you're
standards may
saying.
not be
Okay.
met,
Okay.
and,
I understand.
if pipes are not working
Gotcha,
properly,
sure.
sanitary
Yeah.
conditions are not met. So
Okay.
that's what it's really about. It's not to say
Yeah,
that you have to guarantee to the town that you're gonna build this thing.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
if you don't, the town's gonna come in and build it for you.
right.
It's
And-
really just making sure that you have the
Yeah.
capital ability
To do
to
that.
complete the project and meet the standards and conditions.
Okay.
And you are a unique
Yeah.
beast, because subdivisions very clearly laid out about, bonding, letters of credit, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so I think that takes us through the findings. So what'll happen when we get to the final vote, when we're comfortable we have everything we need or not, we'll go through each of these, and as you look at this, there's a motion to approve or disapprove and a vote on that. So we'll kind of do what we did here today. And then as a board, we'll decide that, yes, we believe that public health impacts, they're fine on that, or here's a condition, as George said, here's a condition of approval for that. And so then I guess what I'd like to get to is kind of going back to, I'll let Brian lead it off. And I've mentioned some of that, it's more what you're doing, what are you asking to do, and how, you talked about, you're not open the winters, but how long are you gonna be open? You talked about nurses stay there 13 weeks, but the ordinance says 12 weeks. And so you need to come in and whatever you decide to do and say, this is what we're asking for.
Okay.
We're asking to extend the open, not saying we'll approve it, I always throw that caveat in there. But, for us to decide that it's okay to stay open and have people living in there for X period of time, and I'll give you kind of some of my comments on that. But I cut Brian off before, so, Brian?
Thanks, John. I think you answered my question. I was just curious as to whether or not you were providing RVs on these sites that people were moving into, or they're coming in with their own RVs?
They're coming in with their own RVs, and so basically, we would like to be opening, which we can clarify this in the next
In
one,
writing.
right,
If we're
in
gonna
writing.
get
I
to-
mean, I can, if you don't want to hear it now, I can wait, so.
No, I'd like to hear
Oh,
that.
okay.
So,
That we purchased.
Yeah, we did, okay, so we did purchase 5, what did I say, cabin RVs?
Well, they're RVs, so,
And this
it's
is,
3 years ago, we purchased RVs, we purchased park model RVs, and,
The famous park model.
yeah,
correct, they're.
they have wheels, it's a,
Right, that's what the ordinance was back then, we had to get something on wheels, and they're here now. It took us 2 years to get them through pandemic and stuff like that, so we do have 5 now.
that we just got like,
That we put 2 of
just
them,
now.
I think, on the year-round sites that we have, and we're looking to put the other 2 or 3 on other sites, if we can. If we can't, we won't. But it took us 2 years, and now there's a new board, new this, new that, so, it's like, we've been here for 9 years, we've already had 3 code enforcement officers, 3 different people, with what we got. So 3 years ago, we did what we thought was right going forward. Now we're into it,
And things switch and then.
right, how do we go forward? We're trying to do, the right thing with what we have. Some, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, so I don't, that's why.
That's where I'm going with this is
That's why
more of
we're
a,
here, yeah.
there's a rental part of this, not just come in,
Sure.
campground, you're renting homes.
So
to
up
people.
till now, I would say that the traveling nurses are coming in with their own campers because we didn't have them. We just got them like 2 weeks ago, if that makes any sense. So we're looking to basically open April 1st, because that's when the ground thaws. And we're looking to close the end of October, weather pending. If we're looking and we're saying we don't want to blow our own pipes up and all of that kind of stuff. So we're looking to stay open till the end of October, weather pending. We have a lot of people trying to stay in for periods of time. We don't have people living in there. We're not looking for people to live in there. We're looking for, it's more of long-term stays for short-term things that are going on, if that makes any sense. And so we have 9 right now. When we bought it, there were 9 year-round sites. So you have to have a system in the ground so that the water doesn't freeze, and so those 9 sites were set up for that. We have, with the 36 sites that we added, or the extra sites that we had added upon the 9 sites, that we now may have 36. I think 5 of those, we were able to get the stuff low enough in the ground to do year-round if we wanted to, if we can get approved for it, if that makes any sense. We have not done that yet. So we're not having people, people are not in those sites year-round. We're only using those 9. So everything else, it's too much ledge. We can't get under the ground low enough to set it up for that, and so it's not even an option. So right now, we bought the 5 cabins that are RV approved or whatever. And we'd just like to cater to a small amount of the traveling nurses coming in for the winter time. Because they don't understand, they're calling from Texas and Florida, and we're like, they can't find anything. They're coming in, it snows, yeah. So we're really not looking, so all of the 113 other sites, those are all gonna be closed all winter. We're not,
The conditional, right, we're looking for extended stay, we're not looking for 140-something extended stay. I don't wanna bother, I don't wanna
Yeah,
afford it during the winter time.
it's 5 extra sites besides the 9 that we're looking for extended for the thing. So we're not, you know, that, all that's gonna, the lines get blown out, that's closed up for the winter, and we don't want to
And
do all
these are
that.
all one-bedroom units too. We don't, there's no 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units and stuff like that. These are 400 square feet or less for a camper, because then if you went to more than that, you'd be considered something else. They're on chassis, they're all RVIA certified, and we're hauling them from Pennsylvania all the way to here because
This is the only place
this is
with
what we
wheels.
had to do.
That's the
That
only
was-
one that's sold them with wheels.
And they are on, what are the requirements? It has to
Has
have
to be
wheels
mobile.
touching the ground.
And it is.
It has
yeah.
wheels touching the ground, it's
Well, here's,
the whole thing.
so it sounds to me quite truthfully like you are not following the rules as they exist today. So if you've got people, I mean, the ordinance is clear, you were approved as a campground. It's just something we have to decide if we want to work through or not. So 12 weeks for the period May 15th to September 15th, and there is nothing beyond that, as it
Right.
exists in the ordinance right now, as you're well aware. So you need to tell us what you want to add, what you want to do.
Right,
So-
which is what I just did. I
Okay.
was looking for April 1st to the
Write it
end.
down.
Yeah,
Pretty
and I
much,
have
yeah.
that, but you asked
Pretty
if
much.
you wanted to.
No, that's good.
Yep,
That's very helpful to us.
yeah,
And I'm not saying we're gonna approve that or
Yeah.
disapprove it or whatever.
Well,
But it-
we'd like a clarification on it, because we put that in, I think, back 4 or 5 years ago with that same question, and crickets. You know, there was nothing, and, you know, we have submitted, you know, we're starting to get substantial investment of a lot of my own
That's
money
what we're
in
here
this
for.
place, and I wanna know what's going on, you know, I mean,
That's very
no
quick.
answer is not good enough for me. I'd rather have a yes or a no answer, you know.
We will get you that. I mean, that's a fair, I appreciate your patience with all this, and I know it's frustrating, and you've
yeah,
got a
especially
chunk
when
of.
people
No, I mean,
change,
no,
yeah, it's not,
It's
yeah.
fine.
And then I guess, I think there's somewhere that says you can only stay there so long and so forth.
2 weeks any other time or something.
Yeah, and so
Right.
if you want to do year-round camping, you have to ask for it, because right now you can't, and then the board.
Well, yeah.
Well, we can do so what it says is you can do 2 weeks any other time, which is you can camp there for 2 weeks and you're gonna leave, 2 weeks you're gonna leave. But you can't do that in the winter time, snows obviously, you can't.
You have to wrap.
No, I agree with that, yeah, but you're
It's
asking,
absolutely useless, yeah.
yeah, you're asking to say that we want year-round.
Yeah.
So when Nurse Smith leaves, Nurse Jones can, back into his or her spot.
Yeah, and I guess a question that I have is, when you go to Florida, and I understand that in the winter you need to close up because the pipes freeze, that you can't camp in the winter time, on a regular campground that's not set up for it. So I guess I wonder why is there a period of 3 months or 4 months or whatever it is, where if you go to Florida or someplace else, they're all open year round? There's no,
Well,
yeah, I
We're
don't
getting
know.
taxed on a 12-month, anyway, that's enough.
You get taxed on 12 months and you only have
Yeah.
3.5 months or
Well,
whatever. it is.
that's-
And it's just a question we're asking because.
Whoever wrote this long ago and far away
And we,
assumed that it was gonna be camping,
yeah, right.
not travel nurses, not whatever it may be.
Right, and another thing I have in my notes is tiny homes. Where does that come in? There's no ordinance for tiny homes. Can we even take tiny homes? Can we not? What's the board think about tiny homes? There's nothing in that for that.
And
Can
we
take
understand
tiny
what it was
homes?
supposed to.
Because the residents, there's ordinances now, I think that the town is considering tiny homes as primary residencies. Did you guys hear about anything like that?
There is stuff on,
And we don't
That's
wanna
a
deal with that.
different
We love you.
you can't do it as it exists now.
That's fine, yeah.
And so you can just
We
say,
won't bother.
the planning board chairman is a pain in the butt and he won't let us do it however you want
That's
to do it.
exactly what we do.
But I would not, it's up to you. You come in and
That's
say,
exactly what we do.
we want to put tiny homes on this and we will consider it.
Okay.
I'm not saying we'll approve it, but we'll
Yeah.
consider it.
And we understand the rules of old, but every time we come in, it's the same, and we're
We
like,
don't-
well, what
we don't
happens to
want
have
people
to change
live-
it?
People are not living there. I think people think that they live here. It's time for them to find someplace else to go, But the units that we have they're park model RVs is what they are. So would it make sense to have the campground own the RVs and say, okay, you can stay in these RVs if the campground owns your RVs, long term?
That's your business, in my opinion, that's your business plan, how you want to do that. I do as, personally, but as a board member, yes, right now you're catering to traveling nurses who have a short lifespan, whether it be 3 months or 6 months. But you, maybe to ask the board, I'm not trying to prejudice anybody else's, but if you start talking about, I don't have a place to live, and I want to move in there. And a lot of people,
Yeah, we don't want.
whether they're homeless or not, are living in their
Well,
RVs.
we don't, that's not over there.
'Cause that's their lifestyle.
This is not,
Yeah,
that's way on the other side.
usually they can't afford, you know, we have a
Yeah.
pricing where it's not
We're-
12 bucks a night, you know what I mean, so that it.
But it's interesting, so you're asking the question, but it sounds like you don't want to offer it to the public,
Offer what to the public?
tiny homes.
I don't like the fact,
But in that.
I have a total different mindset of what the planning board has for the town, as far as subdivisions and stuff like that. I think pumping kids in the school system is a burden on the town. And then you coming in with a single-family house into a campground that doesn't support or even generate any taxes, revenue into the town, it's different.
Then I would suggest write it up for what you want,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because if it is vague, and you're both young and will be here a long time, I hope, but if you strike it rich, if you win the $2 billion, that, you know, I gotta go buy my ticket, but if you, win $1 million plus, and you say, nope, not gonna cut grant, and you sell it to somebody, we have to have
What are
something
they
to
gonna do with
uphold
it?
their
Okay,
standards.
gotcha.
So that's our point,
Well,
put it right.
that was the reasoning why I was thinking, would it behoove us to say that, you know, if you can stay long-term, if you're in one of the campground units, if you're not in one of the campground units, you can't stay. You know?
And please, on your plans and documentation, identify which sites are approved for which use.
Okay.
That's gonna be important. If parts of this are seasonal, parts of it are year-round,
Yeah.
clearly designate what sites are seasonal, what sites are year-round, for what John was saying. And if complaints come in, then the code officer can go in and determine whether you're in compliance or not. If it's just this generic,
Yep.
we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this somewhere here,
Yeah, no, that's fine.
you
yeah.
understand?
Yep.
Well, and then it gets, you know, it carries with the land, so if you sell it, but there is no confusion,
Yeah,
there is no confusion with,
for us or the next guy.
you gotta register, you know, if you own those RVs, you have to register them with the town.
Yeah, already.
No, yeah, that's, we're going different.
Yeah, okay, so,
Town,
Yeah,
so the town, I'm not saying
personal
they
property,
don't.
personal property taxes.
Yeah.
So, you know, we do need our taxes. I want the other thing is on the budget, for it, so
Yes.
we do
Yeah.
need our taxes. So does that make sense? Put in as much detail as you can on the
Yeah.
plans and, in writing, you know, an explanation of what you wanna do,
Okay,
the hour, the window you wanna do it in.
okay,
Get that to us because when we get there, two things, I was gonna end with this caveat, but I'll say it now. Nothing we've said tonight, it should guarantees that this will pass.
right, yeah, we
And it's
understand.
still,
Yeah,
you know,
just
we gotta
need to
view what you're
clarify
doing.
to be able to
I will
say-
just say that so that people don't sit there and say, oh, this is a pre-done deal, because they told them how to do it. We're just, there's questions that I raised,
Yeah,
and the chief may comes back and just say it's not safe. So, and we're gonna hear from your neighbors and others that there may be things that we haven't discussed here tonight that they will bring to us. So is there anything else, guys,
I
that,
have a logistics question, but mostly just to us. So for granting a change to our ordinance to make it so like traveling nurses or whoever can stay, is that something that goes to the Board of Appeals, or is that something we approve?
George, I'm gonna turn to you. Do we have the authority to give them more, if it's a conditional use?
I think you do,
It is a thing we can do?
I think so.
So, not saying we will do it, but we do if we want to.
Commercial uses not otherwise listed is pretty broad.
Okay.
And so it's, what this would do is take it outside of campground, and then commercial is
now-
other than.
That's another.
Now, there are limits to that in terms of if you trigger subdivision review by putting in tiny homes and leasing those. So there are other laws that may or may not, that may not cover it.
So if technical questions like that, or I would work very closely with George and say, this is a draft of what we want to do.
What's missing?
George can say, like he just said, hey, he won't say yes or no, that's our job. But he just says, well, that opens a can of worms that we're gonna need more information on McMansions, tiny homes, whatever it may be. So, but I would work very closely, I would tell you, work very closely with your neighbors, the fire chief, the road commissioner, MDOT. Get all those questions answered as quick as you can and get it to us, and then we can get to an answer, yes or no. And to your point, we don't want to drag this out. We know you want to move on with what you want to do, and the neighbors want to have some resolution to this as well, so. Guys, is there anything else to say?
Yeah, I just would like to know like more information about how many RVs you plan on putting on these sites that will be rentable and not somebody bringing in, because that will affect like traffic, right? And how many, to Alan's point,
So
like,
basically, if they're already in here, then they won't be bringing them in, is that what you're?
well, right now you have some that are there that I can go and rent. I don't have to have an RV. I can just drive into it and rent it from you, right? So how many of these spaces do you plan on having that situation where I'm not bringing in an RV? So there's not, maybe half of the people coming in there just have a car.
It's not gonna be a lot.
Well, I'd like to know what that
It's five.
Just
is.
about it.
You guys have like the big
It's
picture, right?
not,
A master
it's
plan.
not a lot, is
These things are-
not a good answer.
Right,
I
yeah.
mean, it may be, but it's not for us.
I understand what you're saying, but we're just being honest about
Yeah, that's fine, just,
how many.
But you also said that, you know, somebody limits the amount of space to 1,000 square feet, and you're providing 4,000 square feet.
Yeah,
Is your master plan to change that to 1,000 square feet and double what you're asking us today? I would just like to know what the bigger picture is.
we don't like to cram everybody in like sardines, because we have people, what's happening is the campgrounds in the area they were set up for smaller campers. They were set up for pop-up tents and tents. And so what's happening is these people are coming in and making reservations at these campgrounds, and they can't accommodate them. There's 3 people plugging into a 50 amp, the sewer's not working, we've heard everything. So they're coming in over here. When we bought the place, we were in the same boat, and we had everything redone. You know, we made sure that everything was up to par and working right, and that all the electrical was good and everything. So everything is updated and can serve what they're looking for. And so, and again, we're not doing a ton of transit. So what's happening is, you know, if somebody's coming in for a seasonal, then they're coming in and then they're staying in for that seasonal time, and then they're just using their vehicle to come back and forth. So there's not a ton right now of transit traffic with campers coming in and out, and we like it like that. So that's where we're headed.
so please don't use the term seasonal. To me is,
Okay,
you got this April to whatever you decide.
okay.
Whatever term you want, because you're gonna have some that are, the season being 365 days, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I don't,
Yeah,
yeah,
I know
I
what
don't
you're
mean
saying.
year-round, I mean like
Yeah,
a.
nobody fits in that window. You know what I'm
But
saying?
a normal,
Oh, this to that.
but I know
Nobody
what you're
does.
saying, I mean a normal seasonal.
The more detail you can give us and what you wanna do,
Yeah.
that if things aren't working, we can go out and say, yep, look,
Sure, yeah,
Leisure's doing exactly what they promised us they do.
Yep.
Or, hey, maybe
Sure.
not, that those folks look like they've been there for 2 years, what are
Yeah.
you gonna do about it?
nothing else is set up for year-round except for the ones that were already pretty much there.
Did that answer your question?
Is it-
Do we go around about that?
I understand what you're saying, and we're not planning on getting a ton, because
I'll
those
just
are,
need some detail next time you guys are here.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to.
So detail, I think detail and writing is what you're hearing from us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's fine.
Site visit.
site visit, so for everybody here, thank you, is sometime in the next week or two, we need to schedule a site visit. So we need you all to be available, and we need us to be available, and George to be available. And so, gotta now pull up my phone to see, but kind of what is a good day that's gonna work for are you all, is it safe to assume you're always
We're pretty
there?
much
We're there.
open, so I don't,
So we have to notify the public So anybody who wants to can
come.
walk with us. They don't get to, you know, they should generate questions that they'll get to ask at the public hearing. Like I saw, you know, a toad crossing, what are you gonna do about that? And, so what date, guys, works for us? Chief said he's pretty much available. I'll ask Calvin as well, and George.
What's the timeframe for allowing the public? What do we have to do?
How much notice?
Generally, 7 days is more than enough.
So tomorrow's what, the 3rd, so probably not before the 10th is what I'm,
Do you guys send that out, or is that something we have to do?
Okay, so as far as notifications, the abutters have already received
This one from
notice
here.
from you by certified mail. And this is public tonight, so that any of the neighbors will know what's going on. They'll know that you're planning a site walk. So as far as the neighbor notifications are concerned, I think that them notifying the neighbors that this is in process adequately addresses that. Then the question becomes for public meeting laws, whenever the planning board meets as a board, that's a different issue. And generally, as long as you have 7 days' notice in advance of the meeting, that's kind of MMA's guideline. So that's pretty much the
so
seven
I
days
think
notice.
what George said is tomorrow, the next day, for all the folks out, we'll pick a date and time here that will go on the calendar, the planning board calendar. It'll say site visit, Durham Leisure. So if you would tell your friends and neighbors, you know, what you heard, and watch the calendar, because if, God forbid, something changes, but, you know, you can plan, folks can plan to be there and walk. What we want to do on the site visit is look at everything you've told us, look at the cell tower, look at the fence, look at the entrance, look at the structures. Chief's gonna ask you about, you know, what are you thinking about for ponds? It's a good, you know, good chance to exchange questions, although you probably ought to do that separately. So, having said all of that, so the 10th or later, gentlemen, maybe the 11th or later, to make sure we can get enough time out there, what works? 11th is a Friday.
Well, the 16th is a Wednesday.
Yeah, earlier in the week is better for us, instead of Friday.
Oh, the Friday's probably not gonna be good. The 16th, the Wednesday, the 16th,
Wednesday the 16th.
any conflicts from my
Do you have a
cast of
time?
thousands? Tyler, you need to shake your head, Well, yes or no?
I can make that work.
Okay.
Time?
6 o'clock too early? Is that too early? Earlier, 5:30? I mean, as I say every meeting, I'm retired, so I've got all the time in the world.
I'm like, in the morning?
Generally,
You want me to be here?
there are other people who do work.
I'm watching my dog at that time.
So 5:30, is that doable for, does that make sense? We do it 5,
Fine for me.
That works.
5:30? So 5:30 on Wednesday, the 16th, can we meet, we'd have to meet at your place, so
Yeah,
let's,
come up to the
the
office.
swimming pool office,
Yeah.
I remember there's a
Yeah,
sign that
that's
says
right
there. So there'll be 5, 6, 7, 8 cars, depending on how many other folks, the chief will be there.
Yeah, there's a visitor parking on the other
Yeah,
side. There's-
Okay, so,
Is he gonna bring his fire truck with him, or?
he will, actually, the new truck, he just probably,
Yeah.
it's an
Probably,
emergency
yeah, that's
response
fine.
vehicle. What's that? I wanna ride.
Tiller man.
So we're good, 5:30 on the 16th.
Is Calvin invited in there? Is he coming or no?
I don't know if he'll come, we'll send him an invite, we'll let the chief know, we'll let Calvin know. The MDOT guy will not come, because he won't do it with more than one person, so he's shy, I guess.
Public hearing?
I think, my feeling is, and turning to my right, we should do a public hearing,
Yes.
Yes.
okay?
At the
So,
next meeting.
So we will advertise that for the September meeting.
whatever that date is. So a public hearing for everybody's information would be, it looks like the 6th of September. And it's a formal hearing, we open it up. We'll kind of do what we did at the start here, we'll kind of go back over what we've been, changes. And then the public will get the opportunity to come up and voice your opinion, pro, con, the specific concerns you have. so that we've got something to take, the board will review that. So, our regular meeting is 6:30 on the 6th of September, the first Wednesday, whatever that is. It'll also be on the calendar if it's not already. The agenda for that, the package of information that they provide us, and our response, the draft minutes will be on there. I commend you, the YouTube channel, Durham Town Planning Board, or whatever it is, will be there. So if you want to, your neighbors that couldn't come, other people are interested, please have a look at it. So you get a chance to ask questions. We'll close the public hearing, and then after that, going forward, it's just between the planning board and the petitioner, with you having the opportunity to provide questions and concerns in writing. Okay, so having said all of that, I believe we're done with these folks.
Yeah.
So you may leave, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. We will get you an answer. You don't know what the answer is yet, but we will get you an answer.
There'll be no crickets.
Yeah, right.
And thank you. Thanks, folks, for coming out. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda, do you need if we need to, do you need any input from us on the affordable housing information?
Well, I did, as a result of the input from the last meeting, make some changes in the proposal in terms of terminology. But my sense is the board wants to move forward with the dual components of following the comprehensive plan recommendations for addressing housing needs by allowing 2 accessory apartments on a 2-acre lot with a single family, or 1 accessory apartment on a duplex on a 2-acre lot. And then utilize the allowance in the new housing density law to require larger lot size with 2 acres per unit if people go with full-size housing units. So the idea would be to go forward with a public participation process like we did last year, including a survey. I will be getting in touch with Matt Penfield at the Greater Portland Council of Governments to see if they can assist with a survey on the web, which will kind of take, we did kind of a generalized question back then, what are your concerns? Now we'll say, here's the specific proposal to respond to those concerns. Both the concerns that you heard in the first survey about people being concerned with their family can't move here, either kids can't come back or parents can't come to take care of the kids, grandkids. So this part of it, the comprehensive plan addresses that, but people were also concerned about impacts on taxes and loss of rural character. If people put in big houses right beside each other, 3 houses on the same lot, they'll have to have 6 acres of land to do 3 to address that concern. So then you just go out, do another survey, public participation process, see what you hear from both responses, and it may end up that you can the idea based on if the strong public input says, just do what the state says. Don't allow these accessory apartments, or vice versa. Allow the accessory apartments. If someone wants to put a full-size house on the same lot, let them do it.
But we're not gonna have multiple options. I guess what I'm trying to.
No. You're gonna propose.
This is what we propose.
This is being proposed.
What do you think?
And as I described in the revised presentation, these are potential outcomes of that, as opposed to here are your options, or here are your choices. Just say, this is what this says, this is what can happen. Are you concerned about any of that happening? Get that feedback, and then decide, okay, do we want to change this proposal one way or the other? And then, so take that public input, both through the survey, public workshop, one or more, then reformulate and decide what you want to present to the select board. So that's kind of the plan. So the real question is continuing to go forward. Oh, and the other thing is at the last meeting, I think Ann had raised the issue of, well, can you require 2 acres for the second accessory apartment? You can't for one, but can you for the second one? So we're saying we're gonna allow 2 accessory apartments. MMA said, their lawyer has said you probably can. So theoretically, you could require 4 acres for that single family with 2 accessory apartments. So the question is, do you want to add that into the mix? Or do you want to just stick with, look, we got this simple one, even though we could do that, the planning board favors following the comprehensive plans, which you've decided several meetings. So we're not gonna, even though we could do that, and if you get public input that expresses concern about the number of accessory apartments, you could consider that.
I think that's a back pocket thing, like a lot of this. I'd like to, when do you think we'll see a simplified version of what would go out to the public?
Well, I'll start working on it now. I'll start working on, I mean, you've already seen basically a presentation.
Yeah.
But now I'll start working on survey questions to try to say, okay, what questions, and if you have questions, that you, I'll start with something and then you can add, change, modify, whatever.
Right, and when I look at your, the PowerPoint, like, this can't go out to the public, it's just too much. I think it needs to be dumbed down to.
Well, you
whatever.
can't really dumb it down a lot more because people won't understand what we're proposing. So I think, just understand, and this is what we did last time, we'll kind of present this, I try to explain it as simply as we can, as clear as we can, but it's a complicated issue. So then, we'll try to come up with generalized questions that say, you know, are you concerned with multiple accessory apartments on a single-family lot if that lot is the same size? Something like that. Or do you think, you're concerned that if people are gonna be putting multiple homes on the same lot, that should require a much larger lot size? So we can have the questionnaire or survey be more general, dumbed down, but I think you have to provide this information on the website, just so people,
And I'm not sure I agree. I think we've been there, kind of done that. I mean, I kind of think we should come up with what we want to do. It's Al's opinion, and it was, whether it's 2 acres and you get a house, single-family house and 2 apartments, whatever you want to call them. If you want another single-family home, a single-family home that's now 4 acres, single-family home, single-family home that's 6 acres. I mean, I just kind of think what is your feelings, then I think we're just getting a lot of feelings, and I don't know how much, you know, if somebody comes in and says, well, I gotta have room for my in-laws, but I don't want Durham to grow, we're back to where we were.
no,
Maybe I'm misunderstanding.
yeah, I think you are. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is, you've got the original general concerns, both directions. You've come up with a plan that in your view addresses both sets of concerns. Now you want to test these specific parts of this with people. Here's the specific proposal. And as Brian's saying, okay, we're not gonna say, do you favor this part in detail? It's more of a, he wants, I think what I'm hearing you say is you need a more generalized, dumbed down explanation or question, right?
Yeah, I just, like, when I look at your revised PowerPoint based on
Yep.
the last meeting, I just think that sending this out is too much information. I don't know. Anybody?
I think some of the graphics could be made more clear, but I also think, this is a horrible non-answer, but this amount of information has to be presented because I don't think there's a really simple way to say it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I think just to nitpick a few things, like the potential outcomes with the ors,
Yeah,
the orthogonal ors might be a better way to display that, but I think all the information that's on that page needs to go out. I think it's just like maybe massaging the and I don't have an answer for that.
and again,
And maybe, like you say, the written
yeah,
do's or don'ts, maybe that would be helpful.
yeah, I mean, just
Yeah.
get rid of all the graphics. Just say, do you favor allowing a second accessory apartment on the same lot with a single family if it already has an existing accessory apartment? That's simple. That's
Yes.
in the survey.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, because I agree with that, part of that, do we do the public information meeting before we do the survey? So that we give people, that we kind of take the opportunity to explain it to them.
Yep.
Mm.
And then we'll say, okay, those of you who came, those of you watching on TV, here's what we're thinking about. Is this kind of what you, is this what you're thinking about? Is this what, do you favor this? Or do you favor, you know, that start
Yeah,
on
so
a
you did a
little?
public informational meeting to just basically explain the new law.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what's gonna happen as of next July if the town does nothing. Here's what the comprehensive plan suggests, or at least what, this part of it is consistent, because Ann was taking issue with that. Doesn't specifically say single family with 2 accessory, even though it's 3 and the plan says 3. So, basically present that information, which is really that presentation, at the public meeting. Then take public input and say, okay, we're gonna be doing a survey, we've taken your, because like you say, some of their input might revise some of this. But then we're gonna be, you announce, we're gonna be putting out a survey between now and December 1st, or whatever it's gonna be. This will be getting surveys, so get your neighbors, other people you know in town, to answer the survey, because we're gonna take that input, not just the 20 people that show up.
Yeah, we've laid it out, they've had a chance to look at it on television. We can go to the election again and try to explain it. I mean, there was a lot of good questions at the, whatever, we have an election, right, November? I think there's something, there's a referendum, yeah, we have to vote on family law or something.
Changing the
all-
state flag.
all 20 people who come to that election. But so that would be my thought. So we get that out there and we do that, and then hopefully we give them a little bit, but if the consensus is, I don't want to grow, stop growth, then it's incumbent upon us and the selectmen to say, you know, we say we're gonna, this is what we're gonna do, the selectmen come back and say, no, but it's follow the state, and I'm saying they will, but the selectmen will follow state law, the selectmen, you know, make changes, but I guess it's incumbent upon those two group, our group and that group, to say, and I don't know that there'll be a lot of, changing, you know, and then I guess they have to write the final article, so maybe that's it. And they've kind of been, and thankfully been reluctant to get too involved in the weeds on changing what we've done. But we certainly have had, we'll have a year plus of input, and so, you know, this is what, you know, what we think the state law allows us to do. We think it's better than what the fine-tuned reading of the state law, and go from there. But we don't, I guess, if we get blown out of the saddle come April 1st, we know what happens, the state law takes effect.
Yep.
And so, but I like the idea of keeping, and I've gotten confused with the graphics, but if you have a chance to explain it and answer questions, and somebody can watch YouTube, and, but what I think we should avoid is 5 or 6 public meetings, hearings. Let's not do that again. Let's have public information, gather the information, get it out, maybe tweak what you've worked and done great work on. Tweak that, get it out there and say, here's what we heard you say, here's the tweak to that, and get that input back and decide if we tweak it again, and then draft up an article, send it to the selectmen to approve that article, we hold a public hearing, and the town votes on it. But I think last year we did a lot of meetings, and at some point in time, we weren't getting benefit from those. And so maybe it's two informational meetings, but thoughts?
I agree with that approach.
Is that enough guidance to keep
Yep,
it going?
it
And then
is.
fees, that sentence or whatever, sentences we're changing in fees. So the other ones that are out there, solar, historical districts working on theirs.
You were meeting with them on August 10th, right?
Yeah, August 10th, see what they're doing. It's been close hold to this point. And I think that, then the appeals board. The appeals board, we may have to get more involved in. They haven't jumped up, they're gonna work with George in the drafting, but we may have to do the public hearing, whereas conservation.
So basically, I mean, they only meet once a year, if needed. So they're really not engaged. What I will do is, I've already drafted the amendments, following what we had discussed in terms of making it simpler for somebody to expand their existing home in the resource protection or business. So I'll be sending them and pulling the Board of Appeals out of map boundary interpretation. We met with Barb Schneider. She said those make sense. They got some concerns about the expansions, but they agree detailed engineering plans is probably better with the planning board than the Board of Appeals for boundary determinations. Select Board did have some reservations. You were there, John, about this idea. I think it was probably based on a little bit of misunderstanding of what the roles are of the two boards. And so I will send a draft, an explanation to the Board of Appeals and ask for their feedback on it. Depending on if they want to meet with me, I'll be more than happy to do that. Otherwise, I'll take whatever comments they have and bring them to you, so that when and if the Historic District Commission comes with a proposal, you will have that proposal as well.
And I did it in that, I probably did, there's the select, there were probably three or four, it wasn't just one or two, but there were a couple, three that were concerned about taking away the power, authority, responsibility for the appeals board. That they should be the one who handles appeals, and they should not be taken out of that process. And
But I think the misunderstanding was asking for a determination of the boundary of the Resource Protection District is not an appeal.
Right.
It's an administrative decision that whether it's, some towns have the planning board do it, some towns have the appeals board do it, most towns have the planning board do it. So it's not an appeal. That's what I think they were getting hung up on.
Clarification.
It's just clear, yeah, it's an interpretation.
So next meeting will be the 6th of August. It looks like Ruby Lane is coming in. We got an advanced copy of the package to take a look at. That will be on the agenda next time. So, yes, September.
You said 6th of August.
Come back in.
It's only the 2nd. We got this Friday.
You meant to say bottom of the 7th.
Who would take precedence between Ruby Lane and Leisure Campground?
Try to do both of them. And we'll try to,
Who gets precedence? It's the,
the existing, whatever it was.
and they're only here for sketch plan, so.
Okay.
Ruby
all
Lane.
right,
Yeah.
So this stuff that was just given to us today, this is a preview of what's coming?
That's what they.
That's for next month. Those are the hard copies. I just wanted to give them to you tonight.
What's this?
That was just my update on the master planning for this area.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so.
Nothing I need to respond to, just information?
Yep, just informational.
Thank you.
So just, because she wasn't here on vacation, kind of officially announced, Julietta, you may have noticed, is in a butter to the project, so
Mhm.
that she can't participate. So you have to kind of treat her like everybody, I'll miss her, she's got great ideas, but I don't know, but please don't have a discussion about it, she knows, I've sent her an email, she'll follow the rules, but just, that's just for your information.
And generally, in terms of recusing yourself from an application, and again, different lawyers have different perspectives on this, but generally, there's an issue of that board member clearly can't vote on the application. If he or she have a financial interest, which could be, they do this project, it values their property, or they benefit from it. But there's also the issue of bias. And so even if they don't have if that board member then sits down and makes statements to the effect of, well, as a planning board, we never did this, to try to influence the board, and it's kind of a tricky thing where you have a board member who's in a butter, because they have the right to participate in the process, because they do have their own property interests. So it's a real tricky area, but always lean on the definitely they don't vote.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't participate in the board discussion, and they should be clearly indicating any is just from the perspective of an abutter, not from the perspective of a planning board member.
Yeah, so that was kind of for your information. So we got a busy couple of months, and we've got a lot going on. We owe these folks an answer. We want to keep their process moving. We want to keep Ruby Lane moving. I don't know what Bill Bowie Hill threw out there coming back in at some point in time. short down person. So eventually Bryant get, brought up to the major leagues, but we need a minor league player
He's thinking.
to fill in behind him. Look at him. Yeah, we're not paying any more.
Turned around.
Yeah, we're not paying, we're not paying any more.
When do we meet on the 16th? Where do we, I'm not, I know where the entrance is, but the driveway.
Oh, you go in the entrance and you wander back and it says office.
Okay.
The building, and there's a swimming pool there, it's probably still gonna be open.
Motion to adjourn, I'm gonna go shut it off.
Oh, yeah, well, we can't discuss after this, but motion adjourned,
Yes.
Second.
all in favor, raise your hand, so be it.
Well, technically, you can discuss logistics.
Logistics. So, yes, so, yeah, the 16th, and I think they said at their office. I think, I drove up there a long time ago, like a year ago, just to see
I've
what
never
was
been
up.
in.
I only went as far as a little bit in and didn't go